You can let yourself settle now, wherever you are. Let your shoulders soften. Let the weight of the day begin to drain away. There's a place I'd like to show you tonight. A quiet corner of the world where time moves differently, where the air itself seems to hold a kind of gentle promise. It's early morning in Tuscany, and the light is just beginning to arrive. The sky is that particular shade of pale that comes right before the sun finds the horizon. Soft gray, touched with the faintest warmth of gold. The hills are still dark, rolling away in every direction, like the slow breathing of the earth itself. Somewhere in a field on the edge of a small village, two people are already awake, moving quietly through the cool morning air. Marco has been flying balloons over these hills for more than 30 years. His hands know the ropes and fabric, the way some people know prayers, the way a musician knows an old familiar song. He moves with the kind of calm that only comes from doing something you love so many times that it becomes part of your breathing. He's older now, his hair mostly gray, and there's a slowness to his movements that isn't about age so much as it is about appreciation. He doesn't rush anything anymore. Elena arrived at the field before dawn, the way she does every morning during the season. She's younger, maybe in her late 20s, and she came to Tuscany 3 years ago from a city far to the north, a place where the buildings crowded out the sky. She remembers the first time she saw Marco's balloon lift off from this very field, how it seemed to her like a kind of magic, something impossible and gentle all at once. Now she helps him every morning, and she still hasn't gotten used to how beautiful it is. The balloon is spread out across the grass like a sleeping creature, all that faded fabric in shades of cream and soft rust and dusty blue. Marco and Elena work together in the quiet, their movements practiced and easy. There's no need for much talking. The only sounds are the soft rustle of the fabric as they begin to unfold it, the metallic whisper of the burner being checked, the distant call of a bird waking somewhere in the olive trees that line the eastern edge of the field. You can just rest here, watching them work. There's nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to be. The morning is cool enough that you can see their breath, just barely. Soft clouds that disappear almost as soon as they form. Elena smooths out a section of the balloon's envelope, her hands gentle on the fabric. Marco is checking the basket, that woven vessel of wicker that will carry them up into the sky. It's old, that basket, worn smooth by years of hands gripping its edge, but it's sturdy, reliable, safe. The burner comes to life with a soft roar, and Elena feeds the opening of the balloon toward the flame. Slowly, so slowly, the fabric begins to stir. At first, it's just a ripple, a slight movement, like something breathing in its sleep. Then gradually, the balloon begins to fill. The fabric lifts away from the grass, inch by inch, rising with a kind of lazy grace. There's no hurry. The sun is still just a promise on the horizon, and they have all the time in the world. Marco watches the balloon inflate with the same quiet attention he's given it 1,000 times before. He knows exactly when to add more heat, when to let it rest. Elena stands back a little, her arms wrapped around herself against the morning cool, and she watches too. The balloon swells and rises, and the colors of the fabric begin to catch the first light, becoming richer, warmer. It's beautiful in a way that's hard to explain. That sight of something so large becoming so graceful, lifting itself up from the earth with nothing but heated air and patience. When the balloon is nearly full, standing tall above them like a gentle giant, Marco gestures to Elena, and together they steady the basket. The balloon tugs upward, eager now, and they hold it grounded for just a moment longer. Marco climbs in first, his movements careful and practiced, and then he reaches down to help Elena up. She steps into the basket beside him, and they stand together in that small, woven space, looking up at the great curve of the balloon above them. Everything is exactly where it needs to be. The ropes are secure. The burner is ready. The morning is waiting. Marco releases the anchors, and without any sound, more dramatic than the soft creak of wicker and the whisper of grass against the basket's base, they begin to rise. The ascent is so gentle that at first it hardly feels like movement at all. It's more like the ground is falling away beneath them, sinking down slowly while they remain perfectly still. The field drops below, the olive trees becoming smaller, and then the village comes into view, its terracotta roofs glowing softly in the growing light. The hills roll out around them in every direction, covered in vineyards and cypress trees and patches of wildflowers that look like brushstrokes from this height. Marco gives the burner a short blast, and they rise a little higher. The sound echoes across the morning quiet, but then fades, and there's only the silence again. Up here, there's a particular quality to the quiet that you can't find anywhere else. It's not just the absence of sound. It's a kind of stillness that feels alive, that holds you gently, like water holds a leaf. Elena leans against the edge of the basket, looking out over the landscape that spreads below them like a painting done in golds and greens and soft earth tones. She never gets tired of this view, this feeling of being suspended between the earth and the sky, belonging fully to neither. The wind is so light up here that they barely drift, just hanging in the air like a thought held between breaths. The sun is coming now, rising slowly above the eastern hills, and the whole world begins to change. The light spills across the valleys, touching the tops of the cypress trees first, then sliding down the hillsides like honey. The vineyards catch the light and seem to glow from within, each row of vines casting a long, soft shadow. There are farmhouses scattered across the landscape, their walls the color of old sunlight, and thin lines of smoke rise from a few chimneys where people are waking, starting their day. Marco points to something below, and Elena follows his gaze. There's a small olive grove on a hillside, the trees ancient and gnarled, their silver-green leaves shimmering in the early light. A farmer is walking among the trees, moving slowly, checking something. From this height, he looks tiny, just a small figure moving through a world of silver and shadow. He doesn't look up. Most people never look up. The balloon drifts east, carried by a breeze so gentle, it's more like a suggestion than a force. They pass over a winding road, pale gravel, that curves through the hills like a ribbon someone dropped and forgot. A single car is making its way along the road, moving slowly, and Elena wonders where they're going. What quiet errand brings them out this early? The car disappears around a bend, and then there's only the road, empty and peaceful. The light continues to change as they drift, becoming richer, warmer, filling the valleys with a kind of golden thickness that makes everything look slightly softened, slightly unreal. Shadows are still long at this hour, stretching across the hillsides in dark fingers, but they're beginning to shorten as the sun climbs higher. Elena watches the way the light catches the edges of things, the rim of a distant roof, the top of a cypress tree, making them glow as if lit from within. There's a particular quality to morning light in Tuscany that she's never found anywhere else. It's something about the way it interacts with the dust in the air, the pollen from the fields, the moisture still lingering from the night. It creates this soft haze, this gentle diffusion that makes distances hard to judge, that makes the horizon seem to shimmer and float. Marco has told her that painters come here for this light, that they've been coming for hundreds of years, trying to capture it on canvas. She understands why. It's the kind of light that makes you want to hold it somehow, to keep it, even though you know it will be gone in an hour or two, replaced by the sharper brilliance of midday. You can let yourself sink a little deeper now. Let your breathing slow to match the rhythm of this drifting. There's nothing urgent here, nothing that needs your attention. Just the slow passage of the balloon over this ancient landscape. Just the warmth of the sun beginning to touch the basket. Just the quiet. They float over a village, small enough that you could walk across it in 10 minutes. The buildings are clustered together like they're keeping each other company, their walls painted in shades of ochre and pale rose and weathered cream. A church stands at the center, its bell tower rising above the other roofs, and as they pass overhead, the bell begins to ring. The sound carries up to them, clear and sweet, counting out the hour. 7 times it rings, and then falls silent. In the village square, a few people are beginning to appear. A woman is sweeping the steps of a shop, her movements unhurried and rhythmic. 2 men stand talking outside a cafe, coffee cups in their hands, their voices too distant to hear, but the easy shape of their conversation visible in the way they stand. A cat walks along a wall, pausing to sit in a patch of sunlight that's just appeared. From this height, the village looks like something from a storybook, something painted rather than real. The roofs are all terracotta, faded to different shades of orange, and rust by decades of sun and rain. Laundry hangs from a few windows, white and pale blue, moving gently in the morning air. A small garden behind one house shows neat rows of vegetables, someone's careful work, someone's pride. Climbing roses cover the wall of another building, their blooms just beginning to open, too far away to see the color clearly. But Elena imagines them pink, soft, and fragrant. There's a fountain in the square, she notices. One of those old stone fountains that have been there for so long they seem part of the earth itself. Water is flowing from it, glinting in the light, and a small child is standing beside it, very young, maybe 3 or 4 years old, watching the water with complete absorption. A woman, probably the child's mother, stands nearby, patient and unhurried, letting the child take all the time they need to study this simple miracle of water falling into stone. The balloon rises a little higher, catching a current of air that carries them over a ridge and into the next valley. This one is filled with vineyards, row after row of vines stretching across the hillsides in perfect lines. The earth between the rows is dark and rich, and the vines themselves are just beginning to show the green of new growth. In a few months, this valley will be heavy with grapes. But for now, it's all potential, all quiet preparation. Elena loves the geometry of vineyards, the way the rows create patterns that shift and change depending on the angle you're seeing them from. From directly above, they're straight lines marching across the land. From an angle, they create curves, spirals, optical illusions that play with your eyes. Someone planned these rows decades ago, maybe centuries ago, considering the slope of the land, the direction of the sun, the flow of water and air. All that thought, all that care, just to grow something beautiful and useful. At the bottom of the valley, there's a villa, larger than most of the farmhouses they've seen. It's built in the old style, stone walls thick enough to keep out summer heat and winter cold, shutters painted a faded green, roof tiles darkened by time and weather. A gravel courtyard spreads in front of it, and ancient olive trees provide shade. Someone has set a wooden table under the trees, and Elena can see the remains of breakfast, cups, and plates catching the morning light. The people who live there must have eaten and gone off to work in the vineyard, leaving the morning quiet behind them. There's a barn beside the villa, its doors open, and inside she can just make out the shapes of barrels, rows and rows of them, waiting for the harvest that's still months away. The smell of winemaking must fill this valley come autumn, she thinks. That rich, fermenting smell that's both sweet and sharp. For now, there's only the smell of earth and growing things, the green smell of leaves and grass and possibility. Marco checks the altimeter, a simple dial on the side of the basket, and makes a small adjustment to their height. He's so attuned to the balloon that Elena sometimes thinks he can feel what it needs before the instruments show it. He's told her that after enough years, you stop thinking about the mechanics and just listen to what the balloon is telling you. She's beginning to understand what he means. A shadow passes over them, and they both look up. A bird is soaring above the balloon, circling in slow spirals, riding the same thermal currents that keep the balloon aloft. It's a hawk of some kind, Elena thinks, though she's never been good at identifying them. It doesn't seem bothered by the balloon's presence, doesn't change its path. It just circles and watches, and then, eventually, peels away, heading toward the western hills. The landscape below is changing as they drift. The vineyards give way to fields of wheat, still green, but beginning to show hints of gold. In one field, a tractor is making its way slowly along the edge, the farmer beginning the day's work. The sound of the engine reaches them faintly, a distant hum that seems to belong to a different world. Up here, they exist in their own pocket of quiet, their own small realm of stillness and light. Elena closes her eyes for a moment, just feeling the sun on her face, the gentle swaying of the basket, the warmth beginning to build as the day grows. She can smell the earth from up here, can smell the wild herbs that grow on the hillsides, thyme and rosemary, and something else she can't quite name. It's a smell that makes her think of Sunday mornings when she was small. Her grandmother's kitchen, bread baking, windows open to let in the summer air. There's a particular kind of peace that comes from being this high above the world, she thinks. It's not that your problems disappear or that your life becomes simpler. It's more that everything gains a kind of perspective, a sense of scale. The things that seemed so urgent down there, the worries and hurries and little anxieties, they don't vanish, but they do become smaller, more manageable, less heavy. Up here, you remember that the world is large and beautiful, that there's more to life than the narrow corridor of your own concerns. She opens her eyes and looks out over the landscape again, at all that rolling beauty spread out like a gift. Sometimes she wonders what her life would have been like if she'd never come here, if she'd stayed in that crowded city with its gray buildings and constant noise. She probably would have found some kind of happiness, she supposes. People do. But it would have been a different kind, a smaller kind maybe. She wouldn't have known this feeling of floating between earth and sky, wouldn't have learned to read the wind, wouldn't have watched 1,000 sunrises from a wicker basket, suspended in nothing but warm air and trust. When she opens her eyes again, they're passing over a cypress-lined drive that leads to a villa on a hilltop. The villa is old, its walls covered in vines, its garden formal and geometric in the Italian way. There's a fountain in the center of the garden, and even from this height, she can see the glint of water. No one is visible in the garden, no movement, except for the wind stirring the cypress branches. Marco gives the burner another blast, and they climb a little higher, gaining altitude to clear a ridge ahead. The sound of the burner is loud for a moment, a dragon's breath of heat and flame. And then it cuts off and the silence rushes back in, even deeper than before. They crest the ridge and the land opens up below them, a wide valley with a river running through it, silver in the morning light. The river moves slowly, winding through the valley floor like something lazy and content. There are trees along its banks, poplars and willows, their leaves that particular bright green that only comes in early morning. A few white birds stand in the shallows, perfectly still, waiting for fish. As the balloon's shadow passes over them, they don't startle, don't fly. They just watch the shadow move across the water and then return to their waiting. The water itself is clear enough that Elena can see the stones on the riverbed, rounded and smooth, sorted by centuries of current into patterns that look almost deliberate. There's a deeper pool where the river bends, and in that pool, she can see fish hanging suspended, facing upstream, their bodies making the tiniest movements to hold their position against the gentle flow. The sunlight penetrates the water, creating shifting patterns of light and shadow on the river bottom, dancing shapes that move without ever really going anywhere. A small wooden dock extends into the river from a house that sits back from the bank, hidden partly by trees. 2 chairs are on the dock, simple wooden chairs that look handmade, and between them is a small table. Someone's morning spot, she thinks. Someone's place to watch the sunrise with coffee, to read, to sit in the quiet before the day begins in earnest. The chairs are empty now, waiting patiently for whoever claimed them to return. Further downstream, the river passes under an old stone bridge, its arch reflected perfectly in the still water. The bridge looks ancient, built when people had more time, when craftsmanship was something done slowly and well. Each stone is fitted precisely to its neighbors, the whole structure curved and balanced in a way that has kept it standing through flood and drought, through centuries of seasons. A bicycle is leaning against the bridge railing, and Elena imagines someone stopped there, mid-journey, just to look at the water for a while. You can feel yourself letting go a little more, sinking into this rhythm of drifting and observation, of quiet moments unfolding one after another like beads on a string. There's a timeless quality to this journey, as if the balloon has always been here, always will be, floating endlessly over these hills in this perfect morning light. They pass over a monastery, old stone walls surrounding a courtyard and a small chapel. The buildings look ancient, settled into the landscape as if they grew there. A monk is walking in the courtyard, his hands clasped behind his back, his pace measured and slow. He must hear the burner when Marco fires it again, because he looks up, shading his eyes against the sun. He raises one hand in greeting, and Marco waves back. It's a small exchange, a tiny moment of connection across the distance. And then the balloon drifts on, and the monastery falls behind them. Elena looks back at it as they move away, at the ordered garden visible inside the walls, the neat paths, the herb beds laid out in geometric patterns. She can see fruit trees, pruned and trained against the south-facing wall, and a well in the center of the courtyard with a rope and bucket. It's a place designed for contemplation, for the slow rhythms of prayer and work, for a life pared down to essentials. There's something appealing about that, she thinks, something restful in the idea of such simplicity. The land beyond the monastery rises into low hills covered in oak trees, their branches still showing the fresh green of spring. The forest is not dense here, more like parkland, with spaces between the trees where grass grows and wildflowers make scattered patches of color. A deer is visible at the edge of the trees, a doe grazing peacefully, and as the balloon's shadow touches her, she lifts her head, ears forward, watching them pass. She doesn't run, just observes with that calm alertness deer have, that readiness to bolt that somehow coexists with perfect stillness. The sun is higher now, warming the air, and the thermals begin to shift. Marco explains to Elena in his quiet way that the land is waking up, that the sun, heating the earth, creates rising columns of air that the balloon can ride. He adjusts their direction slightly, catching a thermal that lifts them smoothly, effortlessly. Elena can feel it, the way the basket seems to float upward without any help from the burner, just the earth giving them a gentle push toward the sky. Below them, the landscape is a patchwork of fields and forests, vineyards and olive groves, small villages and isolated farmhouses. Each piece of land is cared for, worked by hands that know it well, shaped by generations of attention and love. Elena thinks about all the people down there, living their lives, waking up to another day, each of them with their own small routines and quiet joys. From up here, it all looks so peaceful, so perfectly arranged. They drift over a field where sunflowers are growing, still young, their faces turned toward the east, following the light. The field is a sea of green dotted with yellow, and the sight of it makes Elena smile. There's something about sunflowers that always seems hopeful to her, something in the way they reach upward, the way they follow the sun across the sky with such simple faith. A farmhouse sits at the edge of the sunflower field, smoke rising from its chimney. Laundry is hanging on a line in the yard, white sheets moving gently in the breeze. A dog is lying in the shade of a tree, and as the balloon passes overhead, it gets up and barks a few times, but without much conviction, just announcing their presence, fulfilling its duty, and then it settles back down in the shade. Marco checks his watch, a simple thing with a leather band worn soft with time. They've been aloft for nearly 2 hours, he says, though it feels both longer and shorter than that. Time doesn't quite work the same way up here. It stretches and contracts, becomes something more flexible, more forgiving. Elena nods, not really caring how long they've been up, not wanting this to end. But of course it will end. Everything does. Marco begins to look for a place to land, scanning the fields below for a suitable spot. He's looking for flat ground, away from power lines and trees, somewhere with enough space for the balloon to settle safely. Elena watches him work, trusting his judgment completely. He's done this so many times, brought the balloon down so gently that you barely feel the landing. He spots a meadow on the far side of a hill, a wide open space with grass that looks soft and green. He begins to descend, letting hot air escape from the top of the balloon in small, controlled releases. The descent is even gentler than the ascent, a slow, floating downward that feels like settling into sleep. The ground rises up to meet them gradually, the details becoming clearer: individual flowers in the meadow, the texture of the grass, a small stream running along one edge. They can see the meadow clearly now, can see the way the grass moves in the wind, can see the shadows of clouds drifting across it. Marco makes tiny adjustments, reading the wind, guiding the balloon toward the center of the meadow. Elena grips the edge of the basket gently, not from fear, but from attention, from being present for this moment of return to the earth. The basket touches down so softly that it's almost a surprise. One moment they're floating, and the next, the wicker is settling into the grass, tipping just slightly to one side, and then righting itself. Marco cuts the burner, and the balloon begins to deflate above them, the fabric sighing and collapsing slowly, gently, like something exhaling after holding its breath for a long time. They stand there for a moment in the basket, not moving, just feeling the solidity of the ground beneath them again. The meadow is quiet except for the sound of the wind in the grass and the soft, settling sounds of the balloon folding in on itself. The sun is warm now, full morning heat, and the light is golden and thick, pouring over everything like honey. Elena climbs out first, her legs adjusting to being on solid ground again. She helps Marco guide the balloon down as it deflates, gathering the fabric carefully, treating it with the respect it deserves. They work in companionable silence, folding the balloon, securing the basket, preparing everything to be transported back to the field where they started. When everything is packed away, they sit for a while in the grass, their backs against the basket, just resting. The meadow is beautiful, full of wildflowers and butterflies, and there's a particular quality to the light that makes everything seem slightly unreal, slightly magical. Marco pulls out a thermos of coffee and 2 small cups, and they drink together, the coffee still warm, bitter, and perfect. The grass around them is long enough to move in waves when the wind passes through, creating patterns of light and shadow, silver and green. There are poppies scattered throughout the meadow, their red petals vivid against the green, and white daisies, and something purple that Elena doesn't know the name of. Bees are working among the flowers, moving from bloom to bloom with that focused intensity bees have. their wings catching the light. A butterfly lands on Elena's knee, rests there for a moment, with its wings slowly opening and closing. She stays very still, hardly breathing, watching the intricate patterns on its wings, orange and black and white, in designs that seem both random and perfectly deliberate. After a few seconds, it lifts off again, spiraling upward into the warm air, and she watches it go, feeling oddly honored by the brief visit. The stream at the edge of the meadow makes a quiet sound, water moving over stones, a gentle, constant murmur that's almost like music. Elna can see small fish in the shallows, dark shapes darting between rocks. The water is so clear it's almost invisible, just a moving lens that bends and shifts the image of the stream bed. A dragonfly hovers above the water, iridescent blue-green, perfectly still in the air, despite the rapid beating of its wings. A breeze moves through the meadow, stirring the grass, carrying the scent of wild herbs and sun-warmed earth. Elena closes her eyes and tilts her face toward the sun, and for a moment she's completely content, completely at peace. She thinks about the morning, about the flight, about the landscape spread out below them like a promise. She thinks about how lucky she is to do this, to be part of these quiet mornings, to witness this particular kind of beauty. Marco is quiet beside her, sipping his coffee, watching the clouds move slowly across the sky. He's thinking about all the flights he's made over these hills, all the mornings he's watched the sun rise from the basket of a balloon. Each one has been different, he thinks. Each one its own small gift. The light is never quite the same. The wind never takes you to exactly the same places. There's a constancy to it, yes, but also an endless variation, an infinite number of ways to see the same beloved landscape. After a while, they hear the sound of a truck approaching, the rattle of its engine carrying across the meadow. It's Marco's assistant, coming to collect them and the equipment, to take them back to the starting field. They stand slowly, stretching, gathering their things. The morning is ending, transitioning into afternoon, and the ordinary world is calling them back. But they'll return tomorrow, Marco knows, and the day after that, and the day after that. As long as the weather holds, as long as the wind is kind, they'll keep rising into these skies, keep drifting over these hills. It's what they do, what they love, this simple ritual of flight and quiet and observation. The truck pulls up at the edge of the meadow, and they begin loading the equipment. The balloon goes in first, carefully packed, then the basket, then all the small necessities that make flight possible. When everything is loaded, they climb into the truck's cab, and the driver, a young man named Giovanni, who's known Marco for years, turns the truck around and begins the slow drive back. Through the window, Elena watches the meadow disappear behind them, watches the landscape roll by. The same hills they flew over, now seen from ground level. It's different down here, she thinks, more immediate, but somehow less magical. The balloon gives you a perspective that nothing else can, a way of seeing the world that makes everything seem both smaller and more precious. They drive through villages and past vineyards, along narrow roads that wind through the hills. The truck's engine is loud, and the cab is warm with afternoon sun, and Elena finds herself growing drowsy, her head resting against the window, the vibration of the road a kind of lullaby. She lets her eyes drift closed, just for a moment, just to rest them. When she opens them again, they're pulling into the field where they started, the place where the balloon was spread out across the grass in the cool darkness before dawn. It feels like a lifetime ago, like something from a dream, though it was only this morning. Time has done that strange folding thing again, compressing and expanding, making hours feel like moments, and moments feel like hours. They unload the equipment in the same companionable silence they've maintained all morning. The balloon will need to be properly dried and stored, the basket inspected, everything prepared for tomorrow's flight. It's all part of the ritual, part of the care that keeps them safe and keeps the balloon flying. When the work is done, Marco and Elena stand together in the field for a moment, looking at the sky. It's past midday now, the light different, sharper, less forgiving. But they know that tomorrow morning it will be soft again, gentle again, perfect again. The balloon will rise, the sun will paint the hills in gold, and they'll drift once more over this landscape they both love. Marco thanks Elena quietly for her help, the way he always does, and she smiles and tells him she'll see him tomorrow, the way she always does. They part ways, heading to their separate homes, their separate lives, carrying with them the memory of the morning, the gift of flight, the quiet blessing of having witnessed beauty. And somewhere over Tuscany, the wind is still moving, still waiting, still ready to carry a balloon gently across the sky. The hills are still rolling in every direction, patient and timeless. The light is still finding its way into valleys and across vineyards, illuminating and softening, and making everything it touches somehow more beautiful. The grass in the meadow is still swaying in the breeze. The sunflowers are still turning their faces toward the light. The river is still winding through its valley, unhurried and content. And tomorrow, when the sky begins to pale with the first hint of dawn, Marco will return to that field, and Elena will meet him there, and together they'll send the balloon up into the morning once more. But that's tomorrow. For now, there's only this moment, this quietness, this soft and gentle ending. You can let your breathing slow. You can let your body grow heavy and warm. You can let yourself drift, the way the balloon drifted over those hills, carried by something larger and kinder than yourself. If you're still awake and listening, thank you for spending this quiet time with me. If you'd like more stories like this one, you can leave a soft like, subscribe to the channel, and whisper a word in the comments so I know what kind of story you'd like next. Sleep well. you.